Hi, this is Grace from Elwyn, and it's been a little while, but I'm here to read to you and my friend Albert here behind me a story called Charlotte's Web. So we are picking up at the chapter 6, which starts out summer days. The early summer days on a farm are the happiest and the fairest days of the year. Fairest meaning nice weather and stuff. Lilacs bloom and make the air sweet and then fade. Apple blossoms come with the lilacs, and the bees visit around among the apple trees. Remember, we talked about apple trees the other day. The days grow warm and soft. School ends. The children have time to play and to fish for trouts on the hook. Avery, the young lady that wanted to adopt Wilbur, this is Avery, often brought a trout home. Oh, I'm sorry, it's a guy, in his pocket, warm and stiff and ready to be fried for supper. I'll bet those pants smelled good the next day, right?
Yes.
Now that school was over, Fern visited the barn almost every day. That's right, Fern is the lady that wanted to keep Wilbur. Oh, so that's nice. That made him happy. And the animals treated her as an equal. The sheep lay calmly at her feet, like Albert is here calmly next to me. So around the 1st of July, the work horses were hitched to the mowing machine, and Mr. Zuckerman climbed into the seat and drove into the field. All morning you could hear the rattle of the machine as it went around and around, while the tall grass fell in the ground and lie behind the cutter bar in long green swaths. The next day, if there was no thunder shower, all hands would help rake and pitch and load, and the hay would be hauled to the barn in a high hay wagon in a big pile, with Fern and Avery riding at the top of the load. Then the hay would be hoisted, sweet and warm, into the big loft until the whole barn seemed like a wonderful bed of timothy and clover. It was fine to jump in and perfect to hide in. And sometimes Avery would find a little grass snake in the hay and would add it to the other things in his pocket. Ugh. Early summer days are a jubilee time for birds. In the fields, around the house, in the barn, in the woods, in the swamp, everywhere love and songs and nests and bird eggs. From the edge of the woods, the white-throated sparrow, which must come all the way from Boston, calls, "Oh, Peabody, Peabody, Peabody," on an apple bough. The phoebe teeters and wags its tail and says, "Phoebe, Phoebe." The song sparrow, who knows how brief and lovely life is, says, "Sweet, sweet, sweet interlude, sweet, sweet interlude." If you enter the barn, the swallows swoop down from their nests and scold, "Cheeky, cheeky," they say. In early summer, there are plenty of things for a child to eat and drink and suck and chew. Dandelion stems are full of milk. I don't know if I would drink that. Clover heads are loaded with nectar. The Frigidaire is full of ice-cold drinks. Frigidaire being the refrigerator. Ice-cold drinks, yep. You guys all like ice-cold drinks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Everywhere you look is life. Even the little ball of spit on the end of the weed stalk, if you poke it apart, has a green worm inside. And on the underside of the leaf of the potato vine are the bright orange eggs of the potato bug. I'm not sure I want to live on a farm. It was on a day in early summer that the goose eggs hatched. Ooh. It was an important event in the barn cellar. Fern was there, sitting on her little stool when it happened. Except for the goose herself, Charlotte was the first to know that the goslings had arrived at last. The goose knew a day in advance that they were coming. She could hear their little voices inside, calling inside from the egg. So she was excited, so she sat She knew that they were desperately cramped in position inside the shell. As you know, they're growing in there until they're big enough to bust out, so it's getting really tight in there, and that they were most anxious to break through and get out. So she sat quite still and talked less than usual. When the first gosling poked its gray-green head through the goose's feathers and looked around, Charlotte spied it and made an announcement. I am sure, she said, that every one of us here will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of our friend the goose, she now has something to show for it. So the goslings have arrived. May I offer my sincere congratulations? Oh, thank you, said the goose, and nodded and bowing. Yes, thank you all. Thank you, said the gander. The gander is the daddy goose.
We should all clap.
Yes, the little goslings, which is a goose baby, are breaking out. Congratulations, shouted Wilbur. How many goslings are there? I can only see one. There are 7, said the goose. Well, fine, said Charlotte. 7 is a lucky number. Luck had nothing to do with this, said the goose. It was good management and hard work. Okay. At this point, Templeton showed his nose from his hiding place under Wilbur's trough. He glanced at Fern, then he crept cautiously toward the goose, keeping very close to the wall. Everyone watched him, for he was not really very well liked, and he definitely was not trusted. Templeton was the mouse, remember? Look, he began in a sharp voice, you say you have 7 goslings. There were 8 eggs, weren't there? What happened to the other egg? Why didn't it hatch? It's a dud, I guess, said the goose. What are you going to do with it? Continued Templeton, his little round beady eyes fixed on the goose. You can have it, replied the goose. Roll it away and add it to that nasty collection of yours. Templeton had a habit of picking up unusual objects around the farm and storing them in his house. He saved everything. Certainly, said the gander. You may have the egg, but I'll tell you one thing, Templeton. If I ever catch you poking your ugly nose around our goslings, I'll give you the worst pounding a rat ever took. And the gander opened his strong wings and beat the air to show them that he was strong. They better not mess with him. He was strong and brave. But the truth is that both he, the goose, and the gander were worried about Templeton. And with good reason. The rat had no morals, no conscience, no scruples, no consideration for anyone else, no decency, no milk of rodent kindness, no compunctions, no higher feeling, no friendliness, no anything. He would kill a gosling if he ever could get away with it, and the goose knew that. Everybody knew that. So here they're showing Templeton and the goose. The geese are their geese. There's 2. There's a geese, and then that's Fern. And Templeton is rolling away the egg that didn't hatch. It didn't hatch, so that's fine. That's very fine. With her broad bill, the goose pushed the unhatched egg out of the nest, and the entire company watched in disgust while the rat rolled it away. Blech. Even Wilbur, who could eat almost anything, was appalled. Imagine wanting a junky old rotten egg. Blech. A rat is a rat, said Charlotte. She laughed a tingling little laugh. But my friends, if that ancient egg ever breaks, this barn will be untenable. What's that mean? Said Wilbur. It means nobody will be able to live here on account of the smell. A rotten egg is a regular stink bomb. I don't know if you guys have ever smelled a rotten egg, but it's not pleasant. I won't break it, snorted Templeton. I know what I'm doing. I handle like this stuff like this all the time. So he disappeared into his tunnel, pushing the goose egg in front of him. He pushed and nudged till he succeeded in rolling into his lair under the trough. That afternoon, when the wind had died down and the barnyard was quiet and warm, the gray goose led her 7 goslings off the nest and out into the world. Mr. Suckerman spied them when he came with Wilbur's supper. Well, hello there, he said, smiling all over. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 baby geese. Now, isn't that lovely? Chapter 7. The title is Bad News. Wilbur liked Charlotte better and better each day. Her campaign against insects seemed sensible and useful. Hardly anybody around the farm had a good word to say about a fly. Flies spent their time pestering others. The cows hated them. The horses detested them. The sheep loathed them. No, don't have any flies. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were always complaining about them and putting up screens in their windows so that they wouldn't come in the house. Wilbur admired the way Charlotte managed. He was particularly glad that she always put her victim to sleep before eating it. Very nice of her. It's real thoughtful of you to do that, Charlotte, he said. Yes, she replied in her sweet musical voice. I always give them anesthetic so they won't feel pain. It's a little service I throw in. As the days went by, Wilbur grew and grew. He ate 3 big meals a day. He spent long hours lying on his side, half asleep, dreaming pleasant dreams. Sounds pretty good. He enjoyed good health and he gained a lot of weight. One afternoon, when Fern was sitting on her stool, the oldest sheep walked into the barn and stopped to pay a call on Wilbur. Hello, she said. Seems to me you're putting on weight. Well, yes, I am, said Wilbur. At my age, it's a good idea to keep on gaining. Just the same, I don't envy you, the old sheep said. You know why they're fattening you up, don't you? No, said Wilbur. Well, I don't like to spread bad news, but they're fattening you up because they're going to kill you. That's why. They're going to what? Screamed Wilbur. Fern grew rigid on her stool. Kill you, turn you into smoked bacon and ham, continued the old sheep. Almost all young pigs get murdered by the farmer as soon as the real cold weather sets in. There's a regular conspiracy around here to get rid of you at Christmas time. Everybody's in the plot. They all know about it. Lurby, Zuckerman, even John Arable. Mr. Arable? Said Wilbur. Fern's father? Certainly. When a pig has to go, everybody helps. I'm an old sheep, and I see the same thing, the same old business, year after year. Arable arrives with his takes care of the pig. Stop, said Wilbur. I don't want that. Somebody save me. Fern was just about to jump in when a voice was heard. Be quiet, Wilbur, said Charlotte, who had been listening to this awful conversation. Now look at this sheep. He looks like he's telling him bad news, all right. And Wilbur is crying. Oh, I can't be quiet, said Wilbur, racing up and down. I don't want that to happen. I don't want it. Is it true what the old sheep says, Charlotte? Is it true that when the cold weather comes, I'm done with? Well, said the spider, plucking thoughtfully at her web. The old sheep has been around this bar for a long time. She has seen many a spring pig come and go. If she says they plan to do in with you, I'm sure it's true. It's also the dirtiest trick I've ever heard of. What people don't think. Wilbur burst into tears. I don't want that. He moaned. I want to stay here, right here in my comfortable manure pile, with all my friends. I want to breathe the beautiful air and lie in the beautiful sun. Well, you're certainly making a beautiful noise, snapped the old sheep. I don't want it, screamed Wilbur, throwing himself to the ground. You will be all right, Charlotte said. What? Really? Said Wilbur. What's going to save me? I am, said Charlotte. How? Asked Wilbur. Well, that remains to be seen, but I am going to save you, and I want you to quiet down immediately. You're carrying on in a childish way, so stop your crying. I can't stand hysterics. I will take care of everything. And so now chapter 8 says, a talk at home. Oh, what, Charlotte? On Sunday morning, Mr. and Mrs. Arable and Fern were sitting at breakfast in the kitchen. Avery, her brother, had just finished and was upstairs looking for his slingshot. Ah, that boy. He's very boyish, isn't he? Did you know that Uncle Homer's goslings had hatched? How many were there? Said Mr. Arable. 7, said Fern. There were 8 eggs, but one didn't hatch, and so the goose told Templeton he didn't want it, so he took it away. The goose did what? Asked Mr. Arable, gazing at her daughter with a queer, worried look. Told Templeton that she didn't want the egg anymore. Who's Templeton? Asked Mrs. Arable. He's the rat, replied Fern. None of us like him much. Who's us? Asked Mr. Arable. Oh, everybody in the barn cellar, Wilbur, and the sheep, and the lambs, and the goose, and the gander, and the goslings, and Charlotte and me. Charlotte? Said Mrs. Arable. Who's Charlotte? She's Wilbur's best friend. She's terribly clever. What does she look like? Asked Mrs. Arable. Well, she thought about it. She has 8 legs. I guess all spiders have 8 legs. Charlotte is a spider? Asked Fern's mother. Oh, Fern said, a big gray one. She has a web across the top of Wilbur's doorway. She catches flies and sucks their blood. Wilbur adores her. Does he really? Said Mrs. Arable, rather vaguely. She was staring at Fern with a worried expression because, not a lot of kids come back home and talk about their chats in the barn. So she was just kind of giving her a worried look. Oh, yes, and Wilbur adores Charlotte. Do you know that Charlotte said what Charlotte said when the goslings hatched? I'm sure I don't know, said Mrs. Arable. Tell us. Well, when the first gosling stuck its little head out from under the goose, I was sitting on my stool in the corner, and Charlotte was on her web. She made a speech. She said, I am sure that every one of us here in the barn cellar will be gratified to learn that after 4 weeks of unremitting effort and patience on the part of the goose, she now has something to show for it. Don't you think that was a pleasant thing for her to say? Yeah, sure, said Mrs. Arable. And now, Fern, it's time to get ready for Sunday school. And tell Avery to get ready. And this afternoon, you can tell me more about what goes on in Uncle Homer's barn. Aren't you spending quite a lot of time there? You go there almost every afternoon, don't you? Oh, but I like it there, said Fern. She wiped her mouth and ran upstairs. After she left the room, Mrs. Arable spoke in a low voice to her husband. I get kind of worried about Fern. Did you hear that she rambled on and on about animals, pretending that they talked? Mr. Arable chuckled. Maybe they do talk, he said. I've sometimes wondered. At any rate, don't worry about Fern. She's just got a lively imagination. Kids think they hear all sorts of things. Just the same, I do worry about her, said Mrs. Arable. I think I shall ask Dr. Dorian about her the next time I see him. He loves Fern almost as much as we do. And I want him to know how strangely she is acting about that pig and everything. I don't think it's normal. You know perfectly well animals don't talk. Mr. Arable grinned. Maybe our ears aren't as sharp as Fern's, he said. So that was the beginning. That was a very short chapter, wasn't it? It's only like 3 pages. But we are ready to have someone else talk to you, so we will have to wait to hear about chapter 9, Wilbur's boast. A boast is when somebody's kind of bragging. So I can do something. So we'll find out what he's boasting about next time. And right now, Jeremy's going to come up and give us some information. Well, maybe it's going to be about this bird, but I think it looks like it's going to be about that country or state. So you guys enjoy Jeremy now. And we're starting with Chris. I think Carmen's going to need to adjust that, is what I say. Oh my gosh, and someone's calling me from New Mexico. Uh-oh. Oh, look, you have a guest. He's been very quiet while I was talking. He didn't want to
Thanks, Albert.
Thank you,
Albert. Wow, such a good listener. Let's listen to Jeremy this way.
We got Albert in the audience.
Yay.
All right, so good morning.
Good morning.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah. What do you say, guys? Has it been a long time?
Yeah. So long time no see, you guys. It's me again, Jeremy, and I'm going to be teaching geography once again. So who's ready to travel to New York State?
Yeah.
By a show of hands, has anyone been to New York State? 1, 2.
Yeah.
That's it? Okay. Good enough. Who here is from New York?
Our one friend from New York isn't here.
Which one is that?
Jean.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You learn something new every day. So everyone watching at home, hi, it's been a while. So I'm back again to be teaching you guys some geography. And we're going to be learning about the state of New York, the Big Apple itself. So let's talk about that. So first of all, anyone know where New York State is?
I do.
Where is it?
Over the East Coast.
Really? East Coast. So are we in the East Coast, you guys?
East. Where to go? Out.
We're out west. So here we are in California. To those of you who don't know, we're out in California. We're on the West Coast. So here's New York, right over here.
Yes, I got it.
Someone's a bit excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here's New York State. It borders these other places in the upper East Coast. It's surrounded by Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Canada up front, up in the top. Up north, right over here, is where you'll find dear old Canada, our northern neighbors. And to those of you who are keeping track at home, I did a class on Canada at one point. You guys remember that? So, geographically speaking, the state of New York is within this area where it snows really hard during the winter and it gets really warm during the summer. And as you can tell, these are some of the places where it might snow very hard. So you may want to bundle up. You may really want to bundle up, you guys. While I've never been to New York, I would love to go at least once. And so also geographically speaking, you'll find these little, well, you don't see it here, but right around these areas, this is where you're going to find the lake areas. This is where you're going to find the mountain areas, the forested areas, especially upstate, because get this, you're going up the state. That's why it's called upstate New York. So you'll find far more forested areas. You'll find rivers and lakes, and you'll find some mountains over there. That's why it snows, people. So that's why if in the wintertime you need to bundle up, but you can go ahead and let loose when you're in the summer and spring seasons. So this is one of the few states, actually, that borders Canada with a lake. Right here, you'll see these are the Great Lakes. Has anyone been to the Great Lakes? You? How was it?
Was it fun?
It was good. Was it warm when you got there? Yeah, then you must have gone during the spring and summer times. So to anyone watching at home, this is some of the few states where the Great Lakes are, and this is where one of the biggest sources of water comes from. So a lot of their drinking water, a lot of the water that they use for everyday uses, they usually come from one of the Great Lakes. That in turn comes from Canada all the way up here to Newfoundland. That's a whole separate story. We're not going to go there just yet because we're talking about the United States. We already talked about Canada. So, and the capital of New York, does anybody know in here? Queens?
Yeah.
No, that's a district. That's a district in New York City.
That's yours.
Yeah, but it's not the capital.
Good try.
Oh, man.
But good try. I appreciate the effort. Yes, Patricia.
I went to New York a long time ago.
Oh, you know he's doing.
Yeah. So do you know what the capital of New York State is?
Uh,
Let me give you a hint. It's not New York City.
Okay.
Promise you that.
Oh, Cushy.
Nope.
Cushy, New York.
Here's the answer. The answer is Albany.
Ah, darn. That's
Albany would be somewhere right about up here, to those of you who are wondering at home.
right.
So if we move on to the next slide.
Oh, man.
So let's talk about a brief history of New York State. You guys see this?
yeah.
This little red section here, that's New York. Yeah, it used to be a smaller state until it got bigger and bigger, but not too big. So all of this was New York. Originally, it was colonized by the Dutch, who lived right around here, Chatham Lake, all the way down to what we have here, Long Island, because it's a long island. Get it? So when the Dutch colonized this area, they originally named this New Amsterdam, but it wasn't until when the English came along, they renamed it, well, New York. It was actually renamed in 1664, and it was in honor of a certain Duke of York and Albany. Yeah, naming systems, aren't they fun? Very fun. I don't like naming systems all that much, but okay. It's better than nothing. So it wasn't until 1892 and 1954, many years after it became a state. That's when you have these massive waves of immigrants coming here to the United States. Many of them ended up in New York. Why? Because New York was a spot where everybody came together. They shared each other's cultures. They shared each other's ideas. And this is how the United States became known as the melting pot of cultures. So if you go to New York State today, it is one of the biggest places to go for a lot of historical land sites. Yes, Matt.
So, I know New York.
Mm-hmm.
Football team.
We're going to get to that in a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, let's not get ahead of ourselves. For those of you who are wondering, we're going to be talking about sports a little bit.
Giants.
So let's move on to the next slide. Anyone seen this place?
Yep, I mean, that is.
This is Central Park.
Yeah.
It is one of the biggest parks in the United States. Yeah. It's a big rectangular type of park, and these people have front row seats to Central Park. So anyone who lives in a high rise, you better not be afraid of heights because you're going to have a great view. Anybody afraid of heights in this room? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, but if I lived in New York, I'd want to live so I could see that.
Oh, yeah.
Live somewhere
Yep.
in those buildings.
Some of the biggest skyscrapers surround this one park. And believe it or not, this one park was the site of numerous movies and TV shows. So anyone a fan of superheroes?
Yes.
I promise you here and now, the majority of all superheroes you might have grown up with, they're from New York City.
Right.
Yep, and they lived in and around this one park.
Spider-Man?
He's from Queens.
Ah!
Although it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's only one superhero of notability who's from this particular part of New York City, the borough of Manhattan. Does anyone know who that is? Nope. Spider-Man's from Queens.
Superman?
Nope.
No?
Batman?
Oh,
Almost.
Cody Stark.
That's one, but there's one in particular. He wears the flag of America.
Oh, Captain America.
Captain America. It's a constant joke in the movies. Hey, where are you from? I'm from Queens. Hey, I'm from Manhattan. From Brooklyn. Everyone's from Manhattan. Everyone's from Brooklyn. Everyone's from Queens and the Bronx. There are 5 boroughs. Wait, sorry, 4.
What's
Miscounted. A borough is just another name for a district. The reason why they're called boroughs is because it was from the colonial era when the British came over. So borough is just another name for district.
And is that like a city?
Nope, it's parts of a city.
Parts of the city.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So if any of you go to any of these boroughs, well, you're not going to be burrowing underground. Get it? Nope. Okay, cool. So let's move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
At least somebody appreciated the joke.
There they go. There they go.
Yankees!
Yes.
Who's a fan of the Yankees in here?
Boo.
Okay, I'm a bit divided here. One says yay, the other says boo.
Boo.
Matt says yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
She's got girl.
For those of you who are watching at home, there are some battle lines being drawn. Sports battle lines. Between those who are not a fan of the Yankees and those who are the fan of the Yankees.
Go Rockies.
Rockies? They're from New York?
No.
Oh.
From Colorado.
We're talking about New York here.
I know, but
We know one.
go Rockies.
Yes, Katie. Fan of the Yankees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you're joining Matt on this one.
Yeah.
The Yankees is possibly one of the most famous baseball teams in New York, possibly the United States. There's a whole mess of a history of why they're called the Yankees, but I'm not going to go into the long story, so I'm going to get into the long story. short. Yes, Katie. You fan of the Yankees still?
Do you have a question, Katie?
Yeah,
What's your question?
about the
Yep.
She said New York City.
Yep.
Yeah,
They're
it's
from New
New
York
York.
City. That's what we're talking about. So the Yankees, they used to be an insult of a word for us Americans, but then we just adopted it. Yeah, but the Yankees, it was just one of the many names for people who lived in New York. But now I guess it just refers to the baseball team.
That's okay.
Yeah, we're fine with that, right?
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Moving on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Giants, anybody?
There we go.
Again with this? Again with this? There's some intense rivalry in here, you guys. Isn't that something? I've never had this on one of my classes.
Boo.
Wow. Wow.
And do you like the Giants?
Shannon, you like the Giants?
Yeah, wake up. They don't keep it.
Do you like the Giants?
The Giants are right.
The Giants or the
Okay.
Rams?
Oh, gee, Johnny, get
Go Rams, huh?
Yeah. All right.
Go
Well,
well.
the Rams was California, so we're not talking about that right now. So
New York, go to LA.
I don't know if you at home can see this, but it just says Giants. This is one of their logos. The New York Giants is one of the biggest teams out there. It's one of the biggest baseball teams. So anyone who goes to New York, you're going to see Yankees, you're going to see Giants,
Oh, really?
amongst other teams. I know, you don't like them, but come on. We're just talking about this for the sake of the class.
Go
Shannon, what do
Broncos.
we think about the Giants?
Broncos. That was Colorado. That was like
You go.
3 classes ago.
Yeah, but the Broncos are the best.
Shannon, you
Sure.
like the Giants?
I like the Rams.
You guys said you got one more team.
Are good thing.
One more team.
Yeah, to those of you who are wondering at home, there's a bit of rivalry going on still.
Shannon said she likes the Rams if they're playing the Giants.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, they're good the other day.
They played the other day?
A lot of rivalry in here.
Hey, this is look.
The Rams are
You got one more team. You guys.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Big baby. Yeah.
Yep. And while we're on the topic of sports, let's move on to the next one. If you're famous enough, if you're successful enough, you are a baseball player, and you'll end up here, the National Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I can certainly promise you here and now,
One.
most of your favorite baseball players, they end up in the Hall of Fame.
There you go.
This is where people are remembered for their accomplishments in the sport. Yep. Anyone from Babe Ruth all the way to Jackie Robinson.
Awesome. And that's
So-
in New York?
That's in New York.
Hey, we're going out here, okay?
Is it in a borough?
This one in particular? No. No. Unfortunately, no. You're gonna have to go all the way to Albany for this one.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not in the city.
No. Contrary to what you might think, not everything is in New York City.
Aww.
Which kind of leads me to the next slide. Niagara Falls, anybody?
Yeah.
There you go.
This is one of the other things that is not in New York City, but rather upstate. So yeah, Niagara Falls. This is one of the biggest natural wonders of New York. And it's one of the few lakes that border Canada. And in case you're wondering, ladies and gentlemen, this is New York, that's Canada.
Where's Canada?
Just right up here.
So Canada has the waterfalls. We could just look at it.
I guess so, yeah.
Right.
It's a bit of a debate as to this very day, as to who really owns it.
Where's the division? Is it in between?
It's just between the water.
Yeah, so we don't know.
Yeah, pretty much.
Canada's wonder.
Yeah.
We just get to look at it.
Yeah, correction. It belongs to Canada. I'm guilty of it. Guilty. Anyway, so Niagara Falls. This is one of the many things you're going to find when you go to New York State. It's up in the north. It's not in the city because the city is along the coastline. Waterfalls are not usually on the coastline. They're usually further inland. So has anybody been to Niagara Falls? Anybody?
I have.
You have. How was it?
Beautiful. Amazing.
When did you go?
A while ago.
And who did you go with?
Friends.
Friends.
There you go.
Was it worth going to?
Yes.
Yes, it's a must do in New York.
Must do. Take a boat. You go under the falls. It's
Keep that
amazing.
deal.
You heard it here from Ellen, California. It's worth
You have
it.
to wear a rain jacket?
They give it to you.
Yeah, because you get wet.
You get wet under the falls.
If you get close enough, yeah.
You get wet.
You get close. When you take the ride, you get really close.
Yes.
If you get close, you gotta wear a raincoat. You don't know if you're gonna get wet or soaking wet. Very fun stuff. Yeah, Niagara Falls, one of the few places you're gonna find such beautiful wonders. Oh, and in case you're wondering, Niagara Falls is also one of the few places where a lot of crazy, dangerous stunts were pulled. Yeah, such as a man who put himself in a barrel. Yeah, don't ask why he did that. I am assuming he's trying to be evil Knievel.
Where a lot of movies were filmed there too, right?
Oh yeah, a lot of movies were filmed there. Not that I can name too many on top of my head, but you know. And I'm supposed to be the history guy. Just kidding. So let's move on to the next slide.
Lovely pictures.
Recognize this place?
Yeah, sports band
Madison Square Garden.
and concert bands.
Yep. So a lot of big name concerts were performed here, from Eric Clapton to the Rolling Stones.
Wow. Those are good bands.
Yeah, Eric Clapton is one of my favorite musicians of all time, and he performed here in 2014 in front of a crowd of well over 5,000 people.
Dang.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden is the venue to go to if you want to perform a live concert. Whoever wants to be a rock star, go here.
I did.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure a lot of pop artists perform here too, so let's just leave it at that. It's one of the biggest venues. It's possibly one of the most expensive venues because, get this, it's in the middle of Manhattan, you know, where all the big businesses are conducted. You know, just right near the stock market. Okay, maybe not that close, but you can walk.
So the parking's horrendous.
Pretty much. Yeah. If you watch a lot of live footages of in and around Madison Square Garden, oh my goodness, good luck with parking. Good luck. If you find one, you're amazing.
Wow.
So let's move on to the next one. So what makes someone a New Yorker? So obviously, people from New York, well, that's already a given. But New Yorkers, most New Yorkers you'll find are located down here in New York City. Yeah, it's actually on the bottom. So New York City is where you'll find most people living. Why? Because it's the biggest city in New York. Even though Albany is its capital, it's the capital. It doesn't mean it's the biggest. So you'll have the Catskills Mountains right over here, sparsely populated, and then you'll have Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. Famous places, yeah, but not as populated as New York City. You can get everybody from these three major cities into New York City 4 times over.
Wow.
That's how big of a population New York has.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's how many people live in New York City.
Crazy.
Just the population of these 3 cities, you can fit them in there 4 times over.
And it's such a small, like, looking at the map, it looks so small compared to the rest of the state.
Yeah, but size isn't everything.
No, it's not. No, they have those.
It's how much you can pack everybody in like sardines.
Yeah.
Yep. So New Yorkers, yeah, you'll find most of them over here. Long Island as well, right around along the inland where the Hamptons are, where the rich people live. So yeah, you'll find that New Yorkers, demographically speaking, and here are the numbers, I have it here. 55% of them are white Americans, 14% are black Americans, Asians make up 19%, and Hispanics make up 8%, and then you have the rest are Native Americans. You will find that most people who live in New York, whether it's in the city or anywhere else, they either have Italian, Irish, or English ancestry. You have 3 choices. And you're probably wondering, if New York's such a big place, who are some famous people there? Well, here's a funny list. You'll find famous presidents like the Roosevelts, both Roosevelts, Theodore and his great-nephew, Franklin. Yeah, that's how they're related. Yeah, that's how they're related. And then you have Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Sports fans, there you go.
Any sports fans in here?
Oh,
Michael Jordan's from New York.
Baller.
Who likes movies and actors?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom Cruise is from here.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Any
It's
comic book
impossible.
fans in here?
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Any comic book fans in here?
Yep. Not me, but who else?
Yeah. Stan Lee, the creator of the Marvel characters we know and love.
There you go.
The Avengers, Thor, Captain America, Spider-Man. I could go on.
Wow. Yeah, you're not a fan.
Yep. I'm a huge fan.
I like it.
And I'm not even done reading comics either. I'm still working on it.
You didn't grow out of it?
Nope.
That's awesome.
My first comic book I've ever read was a Spider-Man comic.
Wow.
And I fell in love ever since then.
So how much are comic books right now?
How much do I have?
No, how much? How much do they cost?
How much do they cost? Well, that depends. They can range anywhere from $2 to $3
Wow, okay.
because, comic books are that much of an influence on our culture. They have spoke about things that we do not speak about very often.
Okay.
The questions of who we are as people, the question of how we should treat each other as people. Superheroes have always been allegories for our society and about how we should live our lives peacefully and harmoniously.
Sounds like we should pick up a comic book, you guys. Maybe that should be our next purchase here.
Yep. And the list of how many famous New Yorkers just keeps going.
Okay.
It just keeps going. I don't know where it stops.
All right.
So let's conclude today's class.
Okay.
Statue of Liberty, anybody?
Right.
In case you're wondering, this is on Ellis Island.
Right.
Yes, Katie?
You like that, Katie? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in conclusion, whether you're from the United States or outside of it, one thing you'll know is New York City. This is one of the few places where people go to in order to start a new life, especially when it comes to those who immigrate from other countries. While my parents and while my family did not come here, we certainly remembered the first thing that came into our minds. The United States, we're going to New York, but it's too crowded. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But New York, whether it's the state or the city, people, this is a place where it's been, well, I guess you could say, christened the melting pot of cultures.
Yes.
Here in California, it's Los Angeles. Over there in the East Coast, it's New York City and the state. So whoever wants to go to New York, go to New York. And please visit the numerous sites, whether it's Statue of Liberty on Ellis Island, Madison Square Garden, or any of the Hall of Fames that you'll find in sports.
Lovely countryside.
Yep. So anywhere you go, you'll get a piece of New York with you wherever you go. Thank you so much. I've been your host, Jeremy. Thanks again.
Good job. Who doesn't want to take a vacation safely, right, guys? Like it. Right? Hello.